Hi there. This will be a complete compilation of all the previous videos I've done so far on Silent Hill 2 Remake. This will cover everything from cut content, beta versions, secrets, Easter eggs, lore, development history, and facts. I went back to re-edit those videos to remove the intros and outros to provide a smooth, seamless transition between each video subject for your experience. Anyway, please sit back, relax, and enjoy 1 hour of Silent Hill 2 Remake facts. In a message thread on Reset Era, there were leaked images of allegedly Silent Hill 2 Remake by Dusk Golem, a popular leaker who has built quite a reputation for themselves when it comes to video games and leaking documents and information about them. In these images, it shows in-game captures of James Sunderland roaming through different areas of Brookhaven Hospital. In the first image, we see James Sunderland walking through a hallway that is dimly lit and obscures much of his player model. In the next image, James is seen equipped with a wooden plank. As he is equipped, he confronts a bubblehead nurse who comes around from the corner, assumingly dragging a pipe, a weapon the bubblehead nurse is commonly associated with, behind her as she walks forward. The last image that was leaked is James standing in a room with a bunch of files, documents, and notes on a table along with a typewriter. At the time, when users saw these images, it was likely that the legitimacy was very questionable and rightfully had many people speculate if they were real or not. But according to Dusk Golem, they were, in fact, real. Dusk Golem says, they're real, but they're not even close to the final product. These are from an internal pitch demo from Blooper before they got greenlit. So it's literally a no-budget proof of concept thing rather than a final product. Just keep that in mind. Out of everything that could have leaked, this isn't actually what the final game looks like. Dusk Golem cites more proof of evidence with a leaked document presentation that gives an overview, gameplay features, and prediction of financial earnings/costs of a project for a potential Silent Hill 2 remake. What's interesting about this leaked document, however, is that the 3 images we saw previously would end up being locations that we see in the final version of Silent Hill 2 Remake. If we take a look at the gameplay trailer that was released a month ago on May 31st, we will see the locations that were shown previously, such as this frame where James is walking down the hall with Maria. As James walks slowly on the 2nd floor of Brookhaven Hospital, he witnesses a bubblehead nurse come out from the corner to proceed to walk across the room without noticing him. And finally, the same room where we saw a bunch of documents scattered across the room. As to what would happen to this proof of concept demo, it would most likely be scrapped entirely or repurposed to be used as a basis for the final version of Silent Hill 2 Remake. Now, it would seem like a trail would run cold and end here, but actually, there is a cancelled version of Silent Hill 2 Remake that is more unlikely to be heard of. On the contrary, to having this leaked on a message forum by a leaker, this would shockingly be revealed by Konami themselves. Of all things, on a documentary for Silent Hill, The Short Message, in the segment of the documentary, there's an interview with the developer, Hexadrive, more specifically, the level design director, Rika Miyatani. In this interview, Miyatani goes into detail about her role with The Short Message, saying that she was in charge of creating an outline for the playable sections in the gameplay, giving lots of depth to the creative process of how they come to incorporate such mechanics and systems into the gameplay for the experience they are trying to aim for. The topic of interest, however, comes with a question for Miyatani when asked how she got involved with The Short Message. She reveals that initially, Hexadrive proposed to Konami a potential Silent Hill 2 remake. Beforehand, Konami would reach out to the developer for porting the Silent Hill games onto modern platforms. Naturally, Miyatani and her team were ecstatic about the opportunity but wanted to truly show their potential by developing a mock-up demo. We then get around 40 seconds of in-game footage of Hexadrive's pitch demo for Silent Hill 2 Remake. In this demo, we see the title screen, with the title itself paying tribute to the font of the original along with Letter to Silent Heaven. We then see James walking from the 3rd floor to downstairs. The next shot shows James on the 1st floor, presumably in the lobby of Woodside Apartments. If we pause the frame, we can see that James has his patches, which are not seen in Blooper Team's version of James Sunderland. The next frame shows James looking at the map of Woodside Apartments. If we take a look at the floor plan, it shows the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors. It also looks very similar to the floor plan in the original. We then get the gameplay mechanic to inspect James's journal, where we can see that he marked down notes on the 1st floor, along with comments about the rooms or locations he visited. Interestingly, this looks very similar to the gameplay trailer, that also featured James making notes in his journal about what he witnessed in the town of Silent Hill. The next scene shows James walking down a long linear hallway with a fence blocking him from passing through, and with an exit sign seen at the end of the hallway. And finally, before the mock-up demo ends, we see James walking once again into the lobby and picking up a key with bloodstains on it. As to what would become of this project, this would, unfortunately, be cancelled as Konami most likely didn't pursue interest at the time and rejected the pitch. Luckily, Konami would contact Hexadrive once again to work on Silent Hill: The Short Message instead. Any other information regarding these cancelled/lost versions of Silent Hill 2 Remake is non-existent. After the opening intro cinematic with James Sunderland in the restroom where he looks at himself in the mirror, becoming out of touch with reality, he finds himself reflecting on the letter he received from Mary after she passed away due to mysterious disease, yet committed to knowing how or where she is alive in the town of Silent Hill, where she is waiting for him in their special place. After the monologue, the player gets full control over James while in the parking lot of the observation deck overseeing Toluca Lake. When approaching James's car to retrieve the map, the player can get a slight glimpse at the interior of James's car. If the player were to manipulate the camera, they could look into the passenger seat to see a blanket that takes up the entire back passenger seat and outlines the body. This may seem a bit odd at first glance, but this is actually part of a previous and ongoing fan theory where players speculated that Mary's corpse was actually in the backseat all along. This is further evident when answered by Masahiro Ito, series monster designer, regarding the legitimacy of this theory. According to him, Mary's body was always meant to be in the back passenger seat. This claim is further cemented with a slight hint in the in-water ending, where we get to see James in the driver's seat of his car, then looking slowly behind him at the back passenger seat, presumably at Mary's corpse. Before leaving the observatory deck, you can return and enter the restroom James was previously in. If you leave the door open and look to the right of the wall, you'll find posters advertising Heaven's Night with Maria being featured. Going down the road, you'll find a large and wide metallic fence blocking off the road from being entered. If you look up at the signs, you'll find Old Silent Hill and Brahms. Old Silent Hill is a previously seen location that was in Silent Hill 1. Brahms is a city Sybil Bennett, a major character from Silent Hill 1, is originally from. When walking on the forest trail to the town of South Vale, James will encounter a well with a red square lying at the bottom. They are used as save points throughout the game. While this is a fact, what's interesting is that James comments on the feeling of, quote, someone going inside his skull to grope him. This is literally and figuratively meta-commentary, as we the player are going inside James's mind to save his progress, that is, in this context, his memories throughout the game. A detail that is crucial in James's journey of remembering his time in Silent Hill, along with his wife Mary before her death. When reaching the graveyard where we meet Angela Orozco, we get to interact with her for the first time, questioning where to follow a path that leads to the town of South Vale. Following the interaction, we can have the option to talk to her once again. If we take a moment to manipulate the camera once again, we can see a bit more detail behind Angela's character model, where we get to see her nails, torn and wear, where it looks as if she was biting on them previously. This is a small subtle detail to her character development of the trauma she received during her long years of abuse from her father, Thomas Orozco, manifested as the abstract daddy from her subconscious that is realized in the town itself. In mental health, nail biting can be a sign of anxiety or stress, as well as depression. While not confirmed, Angela presumably used this as a coping mechanism. While walking on the path to the town of South Vale, James will encounter on the path a farm called Silent Hill Ranch. Silent Hill Ranch is also a location previously seen in the original Silent Hill 2 briefly, such as here. While this may seem insignificant at the moment, there is actually a well-known meme of the sign of Silent Hill Ranch that was heavily mocked by the community in its portrayal in the Silent Hill HD collection. In the HD collection, the sign switched its previous font to a Comic Sans font that looked out of place. The sign would hilariously make a return in the remake, albeit well hidden inside the barn on the ranch. If we manipulate the camera, we can find this exact same Comic Sans font once more. One of the unlockable achievements in Silent Hill 2 Remake is called Echoes. To unlock this, the player must witness all glimpses of the past in a single playthrough. These glimpses of the past are homages to the original Silent Hill 2 that serve as references to events that played out in the story. Such callbacks and references make a notable return throughout the remake, such as seen here in the underpass before entering the town of South Vale. This was originally where James encountered the lying figure and received the wooden plank. Another glimpse of the past references the corpse you'd originally find at the end of Martin Street to retrieve the Woodside Apartments key. Others include the original coin puzzle found littered in debris in Blue Creek Apartments. and the original Pyramid Head boss fight in the stairwell of Blue Creek Apartments. There are approximately 26 glimpses of the past that would spark nostalgia and memories that remind us of the original. Continuing onwards into the town of Southvale, we can find memos of references to Silent Hill locations, lore, and history in the Silent Hill timeline. When walking up north of Neely Street, James can stumble upon a memo that details popular landmark destinations in Silent Hill. These locations are Toluca Lake, Lakeside Amusement Park, the Lighthouse, and Old Silent Hill. Lakeside Amusement Park made previous appearances in Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3 during the Otherworld sequences. The Lighthouse appeared in Silent Hill 1 during the Nightmare Resort area sequence, and finally, Old Silent Hill is one of the main locations you explore in Silent Hill 1 as the playable protagonist Harry Mason. When inside Woodside Apartments, on the first floor in room 112, James could find a newspaper article that goes into heavy detail about a murder case about two unfortunate victims named Billy and Miriam Locane, murdered by the serial killer Walter Sullivan, the main antagonist of Silent Hill 4. The importance of this murder case is that it is loosely tied to Silent Hill 4, which sets up Walter Sullivan as his role in conducting the 21 Sacraments ritual, as well as the appearance of the twin victims, a monster manifested by the psyche of Walter Sullivan's memories. Further references to Silent Hill 4 could also be found in Woodside Apartments Room 102, with a very similar replication of Room 302, the apartment room in which Henry Townsend, the protagonist of Silent Hill 4, resided. It may just be a coincidence, however, but the similarities are too noticeable to dismiss. When accessing the public pool in the apartment complex, James can find a map that not only is the town of Southvale, but actually the original map itself. When exploring Nightmare Blue Creek Apartments, James will eventually come to stumble upon room 209. When entering, if you turn your volume up and listen very carefully, you can hear a whisper of words being spoken. These words at first glance are very haunting and creepy, as it's unexpected. However, this is a reference to room 209 in the original Silent Hill 2, where the same events happens when entering the room itself. What's interesting about this whisper, however, is more so the origin of the whisper itself, as it was initially speculated by the community to have some bearing of importance. In an interview with an English translator and localizer, Jeremy Blostein reveals that the whisper that players hear in room 209 is nothing more than one of the voice actors rehearsing lines with gibberish during recording sessions. However, this will later be disproven, and the actual source for the whisper of 209 would be later confirmed to be just a generic sound effect. This officially comes from the Nightingale voice box. Here's the actual full audio clip, titled Whisper_Random. During the boss fight with Pyramid Head, you may have the impression of dealing damage to him to defeat him to continue with progression throughout the story. And while this is true, you technically don't have to deal any damage at all to Pyramid Head, and instead, wait out the boss fight itself as there is a time limit before the duration of the fight ends. It's about approximately 6 to 7 minutes of waiting out Pyramid Head's attacks. However, after meeting Maria at the pier in Rosewater Park, James and Maria will find Jack's Inn to retrieve a key to continue their journey through West Southvale to find Mary. During this stop, however, there are quite a few huge Easter eggs that you can find in the motel rooms. On the second floor of Jack's Inn, James can find a memo that hints at the access code for the locker safe. When returning to Maria, Maria holds out to James her classic outfit from the original Silent Hill 2. A nice little reference and joke at the expense of her fashion design, in which she asks James if she would look good in it or not.
Sure.
Not quite the ringing endorsement, but hey, I'll take it.
If we were to continue to room 106, we could find a fedora that lies on the edge of a chair. This fedora is a reference to Douglas Cartland, a major character from Silent Hill 3, who is a private investigator tasked by the religious cult, the Order, to go and find Heather Mason, the main protagonist from Silent Hill 3. Further cementing this reference to Silent Hill 3 is James's comment about feeling uncomfortable and not safe in this room.
I think we should leave.
Oh, loosen up, James. It sure beats running around with those monsters out there.
I'm not so sure.
James confirms his suspicions when revisiting room 106 during the Night West Southvale sequence to find the halo of the sun hidden behind torn wallpaper. The halo of the sun is the signature symbol that affiliates with the Order, reflecting the ideas of the rebirth of a god, cleansing the world of hate and in turn, giving birth to a paradise. A heavy motivation from both antagonists Dahlia Gillespie and Claudia Wolf, respectively from Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3, cultists who resided in the town of Old Silent Hill, the base of their operations. Before using the key to leave Jack's Inn, you can visit Pete's Bolorama beforehand alongside with Maria. While here, James discovers a box of open pizza that isn't finished. If you were to interact with the pizza, James makes a familiar comment.
Ugh, this town's full of monsters. Who could just sit here and eat pizza?
This comment he makes is a reference to a funny interaction between James and Eddie from the original Silent Hill 2, in which James implores Eddie to join him in finding Laura. Eddie refuses and instead decides to eat his pizza. James responds in frustration and confusion by Eddie being so calm eating pizza, while there's a town full of monsters.
Eddie, let's go after her! Huh?
Laura? Why?
Laura, is that her name?
That's what she said.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
While not the same delivery featured in the remake, this similar interaction is seen in Revere Theater, where instead of pizza, Eddie is eating a tub of ice cream. Upon leaving Pete's Bolorama and heading west past Silent Hill Historical Society, James can stumble upon a corpse with a memo by it. After reading the memo, you can finally hear two sounds of bodies hitting the pavement behind you. Backtracking a little, you will find two mannequins lying deceased on the road. This may seem very random and odd, but it's a reference to the mannequins found in the same road in the original Silent Hill 2, where they randomly get launched from the bushes onto the road to attack James. After leaving Jack's Inn, James finds a mansion in front of him with the entrance open, only to find a white liquid that is broken. Upon returning to Maria, James asks Maria if she is feeling okay, to which she responds not feeling safe and has a bad memory of this mansion.
Yeah, it's just... this place just gives me the creeps. Not sure why.
You ever been inside?
I'm not sure. It does feel familiar somehow. Like a bad memory. It's nothing, really.
This is a reference to her sub-scenario, Born from a Wish, when James and Maria find themselves in Heaven's Night talking to each other and relaxing before going back to exploring West Southvale to find Mary. Maria offers James a drink to celebrate finding what they both like to call hope. James, however, respectively declines Maria's offer of drinking alcohol. What's interesting about this scene is the subtle hand movement James makes when contemplating drinking alcohol or not. It's a nice attention to detail that touches upon James's previous alcoholism after the passing of Mary, and while Mary was in the hospital for her unknown terminal illness. What's really cool about this detail though is that it actually is seen in the original Silent Hill 2, when James and Maria enter the back entrance leading into Heaven's Night. James can find bottles of alcohol to interact with and make a comment on it, stating how he used to be a heavy drinker to drink away from the pain he felt. While exploring Revere Theater to find Laura, James stumbles upon a theater room where the picture starts to suddenly play on a blank white screen. If you were to wait long enough, you can get a quick glimpse of a frame that is in black and white. If paused at the appropriate frame and zoomed into focus, the player can see a frame of the videotape in which James filmed where he and Mary stayed in room 302 of Lakeview Hotel during a vacation trip to Silent Hill. These foreshadow the events that are yet to come, where James eventually remembers he killed Mary. After defeating the Fleshlips in Brookhaven Hospital, James is then transported to Nightmare Brookhaven Hospital. While here, after exiting the first room and turning to your left, you'll find a red square to save your progress. You'll find imagery of a rusted metallic fence along with a fan spinning slowly. This looks similar to the same presentation of Silent Hill 1, when in Nightmare Midwich Elementary School as Harry Mason, and Silent Hill 3 in the cathedral before the final boss. However, this could just be mere coincidence. When first entering the labyrinth, James can find an abstract and disturbing hallway that is filled with limbs of mannequins that block James's path in progressing. Upon closer inspection, this could be a reference to the opening intro cinematic of the original Silent Hill 2, which also features similar imagery of the mannequins. Continuing in the labyrinth, James will find himself exploring the rotted area, where he finds a room that is filled with only an office space. It's quite the odd inclusion and questionable, to say the least, as to why such a random space is seen here in all of places. However, if we take a look at James's character profile, it reveals that James's occupation is a clerk. This is revealed in the Book of Lost Memories Silent Hill Chronicle, an official 136-page documentation of the earlier Silent Hill games before Silent Hill 4. In this documentation, we can find a page specifically about the character profiles from Silent Hill 2. At some point during the story, James eventually develops a lot of wear and tear over time when it comes to his appearance. One notable detail is his thumbs when inspecting the map of a location he is in. For example, when first arriving in Silent Hill, his thumbs will be noticeably clean. Eventually, when in the labyrinth, James's thumbs will look dirty. More of this tired appearance is also seen when James is talking to Laura after it's revealed that he killed Mary, with notable eye bags around his eyes. Before the boss fight with Eddie, you'll stumble upon a cemetery that features various gravestones. On one of these gravestones, we once again get a reference to Walter Sullivan. When exploring the basement of Lakeview Hotel to find a way to escape, James can find a kitchen that will have an assortment of food. If James chooses to interact with the bread, you'll get an achievement called It's Bread. A reference to a meme from Silent Hill 3, where Heather Mason can also interact with bread in the bakery store of Central Square Shopping Center. If she chooses to interact with the bread, she comments, "It's bread." Before the Pyramid Head duo boss fight, if you choose to save at the 9 red squares, you can see a subtle difference in James's facial expression when looking at the red square. Initially, James would stare blankly. However, he instead looks away from the screen and avoids making contact this time. While mysterious and not exactly explained, it can be theorized that this is a nod to James's uncertainty about accepting the truth as he recently learned that he killed Mary. The red squares are theorized to be a reflection of one's inner feelings and thoughts, an insight into James's psyche, if you will. At the beginning of the game, before leaving the observation deck, you can inspect Mary's letter to see the handwriting on the paper. At the end of the game, before fighting the Pyramid Head duo and Mary, the letter is not to be found, never existing and merely just one of James's delusions of Mary being alive, manifested by the town itself. Upon finishing the game, you have the option of selecting New Game Plus. When playing in New Game Plus, you can find a now unlockable weapon called the Chainsaw near Silent Hill Ranch. When used on an enemy, if you were to wait for a certain amount of time, you can see James do an idle animation. This is also a feature that is seen in the original Silent Hill 2. After the opening cinematic cutscene, if you were to walk down the road of the observation deck, you could find a white van parked by the entrance of the forest trail. This white van is speculated to be owned by Eddie Dombrowski, one of the main characters in Silent Hill 2 Remake. While not confirmed by word of mouth from Eddie himself, it's heavily implied that it is related to him, given the messy interior of the car itself, such as the large soda cup discarded on the dashboard. Eddie is known to be messy when it comes to him and food. Another indicator of this van belonging to Eddie is in the original FMV intro of the original Silent Hill 2. In the intro cinematic, we get a brief cutscene of Eddie and Laura conversating by a white van, with Eddie sitting by it. Further down the road past Eddie's white van is a large metal fence that blocks the player from entering through the tunnel, with a message that reads, "Welcome." However, the sign is notably missing a couple of words, which are the letters L and E. There is interestingly quite a bit of history regarding this certain welcome message, prior to Silent Hill 2 Remake. In the original Silent Hill 2, there was a beta version titled Silent Hill 2 version 0.10. In the beta version, the welcome message contained 2 letter L's, with a missing E at the end of welcome. In the final version of Silent Hill 2, it was fixed. In the observation deck, if you return to the restroom, you can find a certain graffiti at the end of the restroom stall. This graffiti is a crude depiction of the demon Lilith, containing Hebrew writing. Above the graffiti are a depiction of Sanoi, Sanzanoi, and Samnagloth. Interestingly, this depiction of the demon Lilith is found in the Kabbalah by Gershom Scholem. This graffiti was originally seen in the original Silent Hill 2 as well. Before the first encounter with the lying figure, you can find a monument that is on Lindsay Street. This monument is known as Remains of Blood Swamp. Upon reading, the following text is redacted and hard to detail the full transcript of the full message. However, when uncovering the files from the original Silent Hill 2, it contains a fully legible script. Essentially, it details the story of a swamp called Blood Swamp, due to the town's executioners using the swamp as a means to wash their execution tools after an execution. Hence, the blood from the tools pollutes the swamp with blood, earning the nickname. Throughout Silent Hill 2 Remake, you'll find dead bodies littered in areas they explore across the town of Southvale. If you take a closer look, you can see that many of the corpses have details that match James's appearance. This is an intentional detail that is supposed to be a reflection of James's suppressed thoughts, feelings, and emotions when it comes to himself. This conveys the idea of James subconsciously desiring punishment for his misdeed of killing his wife, Mary. The town's spiritual power manifests as James' fears that are brought to life by tormenting him with these mangled, deceased, and mutilated corpses. These dead bodies are also originally seen in the original Silent Hill 2 that serves the same purpose. In the town of Southvale, you'll come to find a restaurant called Happy Burger. This is an in-universe fast food restaurant in the Silent Hill franchise that is a parody of the fast food chain Burger King. Happy Burger has made a previous appearance in Silent Hill 3, where Heather wakes up in the fast food restaurant after a nightmare she has of the other world, upon dying in her dream. It also has other fast food parodies seen in the franchise, such as Konami Burger or Queen Burger in Silent Hill 1. While looking for parts for the jukebox puzzle to collect the Woodside Apartments key, you'll eventually stumble across an apartment building called Saul Street Apartments. Here, you'll find an apartment with a noticeable hole in the bathroom. Players have suspected that this hole is a reference to Silent Hill 4, as Henry Townsend also discovers he has a hole in his bathroom wall. The reason why this is seemingly a reference to Silent Hill 4 is not only the hole itself, but also the interior of the bathroom looking fairly similar to that of Henry's bathroom in room 302. Throughout Silent Hill 2 Remake, you'll find monsters called creepers, these small insect-like cockroaches that deal small damage to James. The creepers originally manifest from Alessa Gillespie, an important character from Silent Hill 1. She has a disgust and dislike of these insects, to the extent to where the town itself manifests these creatures to life. According to Masahiro Ito, he would address this inclusion of the creepers with a comment on Twitter, stating that it's merely a homage to Silent Hill 1. While in Woodside Apartments, James encounters Pyramid Head behind a barred fence in the hallway. If you were to have your chainsaw equipped in New Game Plus and walk up to Pyramid Head, he does an animation where he lifts the chainsaw above his head and makes a battle cry. It's also important to note that James does this with usually every enemy and sometimes even in interactable objects. After the cutscene of being introduced to Eddie, you can explore a room close by. Here, you'll find a bedroom with football posters and a football helmet. This is a reference to the victim that Eddie shot in the kneecap that was his bully. The revolver Eddie is seen using before his boss fight is the same revolver he uses to shoot the football player in the kneecap, as well as the dog he killed. In the freezer room with the deceased corpses, these aren't actually real people killed, merely delusions. Masahiro Ito confirms this, stating that Eddie only killed the dog. Upon completing the coin cabinet puzzle, you receive the key to room 201. In this room, you'll find a bedroom with a bed to the side, a nightstand with a lamp, and a chair next to it. In the ending, you'll find this same bedroom, now accompanied by a bedridden Mary and James sitting next to her. This room is most likely the room Mary lived in during her final days before her death. Interestingly, in the labyrinth, specifically the ridden area, you can find the same bedroom becoming more in ruin during the 3 trials. After completing the final trial, a wall will become rubble and debris, landing specifically on Mary's bed, symbolic of Mary's illness going through stages before succumbing to her death, as well as Mary and James's lives becoming ruined and falling apart. As you explore Blue Creek Apartments, you can find a haunting black silhouette in a lit-up window. It's speculated to be either one of the spirits of the people who used to occupy the apartment complex, or a spirit of Mary watching over James. However, there is no substance to these claims, mostly speculation. Much like the original Silent Hill 2, James also sticks his hand into a toilet to retrieve an item. The difference here is that in the original, James finds a note for the locker puzzle in the next room over to get handgun ammo. In the remake, he retrieves the minute hand for the grandfather clock puzzle. After the cutscene with Angela in the mirror room of Blue Creek Apartments, you can find a photo that shows a family together. However, if you look closely, you can see that it is conveniently ripped up in 2, separating the father and brother from the mother and daughter. This gives subtle imagery of Angela's relationship with her father and brother, as they abused her extensively since she was a young girl. In room 2 of 2 of Blue Creek Apartments, you can find a massive swarm of moths. Later, in the final boss fight with Mary, one of Mary's primary attacks is using a swarm of moths to attack James. Moths are seen as a symbol of death in most cultures. Black moths, in particular, can represent morality, divinity, new beginnings, and resurrection, a motif that is seen in the death of Mary that proceeds to coexist with the birth of Maria. In Jack's Inn, if you were to save at the car with the red square, Maria makes a comment to James asking him if he is alright as he is frozen, while the player is saving their progress, a joke that breaks the fourth wall.
James? Is everything alright? Hey, you okay? It's like you froze for a second.
Yeah, it's fine.
At the front entrance of Baldwin Mansion, you can find a white chrism in New Game Plus, an item needed to unlock the rebirth ending. An ending that sees James refusing to accept Mary's death and trying to resurrect her with the help of the items needed to commence the ritual. The white chrism is also seen in the original Silent Hill 2 in the sub-scenario Born from a Wish. This is an item that Ernest Baldwin needs to conduct a ritual to bring back his late daughter after she passed away some time ago. In Heaven's Night, you can find a couple of references to pop culture media, most notably inspirations behind the Silent Hill games. By the bar, you can find Jacob's Lagger, a reference to Jacob's Ladder, and Ale Peaks, a reference to Twin Peaks. Close by, you can find a sticker of Robbie the Rabbit, a mascot for a lakeside amusement park. Finally, in the Lost and Found bin, you can find items such as a wallet, a ring, and black shades. If we take into account the black shades, this could be referencing Sybil Bennett, a police officer from Silent Hill 1, who's also seen wearing black shades in the intro FMV. The ring is possibly connected to James, as he is seen missing his ring from his ring finger in the opening cinematic. Finally, a nurse's uniform can be found in one of the booths. This is a reference to a nurse from Silent Hill 4 called Rachel. A similar looking nurse outfit is found in Silent Hill 4 in South Ashfield Heights. While in Nightmare Brookhaven Hospital, you can find a room on the second floor that has a bed and a nightstand of medication besides it. This is connected to Mary, specifically during her time in the hospital with her unknown illness. This also appears in the original Silent Hill 2. While exploring Night West Southvale, you can stumble upon a bus that reads Silent Hill School Bus. This could be referencing Midwich Elementary School, a school located in Old Silent Hill from Silent Hill 1. There also happens to be a similar looking school bus seen by Midwich Elementary School. In Silent Hill Historical Society, there's a painting depicting the steamboat Little Baroness, a ship that sailed across Toluca Lake in November 1918. However, in a tragic incident, the boat sank for unknown reasons, resulting in 14 people on board succumbing to their deaths. In Silent Hill the Arcade, the Little Baroness plays a huge plot point surrounding the story. Characters Eric and Tina, along with their club from university, visit Silent Hill to uncover the mystery behind the voyage and the deaths surrounding it. While exploring Silent Hill Historical Society, there is a painting of the founding members, picturing all of them sitting together. In the original Silent Hill 2, the same painting can also be found in the Silent Hill Historical Society. However, the painting depicted is actually not the founding members themselves, but rather the members of Team Silent, the development team behind Silent Hill 2. There's a painting depicting Pyramid Head in the Silent Hill Historical Society, with an iconic pose that shows Pyramid Head standing tall with his great sword, with hanging caged bodies floating above. The painting, Misty Day Remains of Judgment, is a painting both James and Mary view upon their visit to Silent Hill, during their vacation and right before Mary gets sick with her incurable disease. This painting stuck to James's memory, and because of James's desire to seek punishment for his sins and crimes against Mary, this would idealize into the physical manifestation we know as Pyramid Head. Before jumping down the hole to Toluca Prison, you can find a painting called Crimson and White Banquet. This painting depicts the town's executioners dating back to the early history of Silent Hill. At this time, the town's cults, the Order, stole from the natives and claimed the land for themselves. The Valtiel sector would perform public and ritualistic executions, wearing red hoods over their heads and an executioner outfit that closely resembles Pyramid Head. Before I continue with this entry, I want to give a fair warning as this will contain a jump scare. For those easily unsettled and upset with loud noises, please skip to the listed timestamp to skip this section. While in Toluca Prison, if you enter the women's restroom down the hallway while in the Boar area, you can get a subversion of expectations when trying to enter one of the restroom stalls that is met with a jump scare when you leave. This same jump scare is also seen in the original Silent Hill 2 with the same setup. In the basement area of Toluca Prison, you can find a jail cell that has 3 paintings. In one of these paintings, you can find one titled Burning Man, showing a building burning on fire. This building in question is the Lakeview Hotel. To support this, if we head into the Lakeview Hotel employee section area, specifically the break room, we can find a heater with a text that reads, "I'm Johnny, one hot guy." This implies that Johnny caused the heater to malfunction and caught the surrounding curtain on fire, causing the series of events to burn down Lakeview Hotel. Further supporting this is the sign above the entrance to Lakeview Hotel that reads, "Special places spark fires that warm our hearts forever." After the cutscene of James meeting Maria in the labyrinth, if you were to return back to the same room, you can find Maria humming the song Promise, the main theme of Silent Hill 2. While ascending the stairs from the first floor to the second floor of Lakeview Hotel, you can find a wall of paintings. One of these paintings references a familiar household, the Gillespie house from Silent Hill 1. The Gillespie house is home to both Dahlia Gillespie and Alessa Gillespie, located in their hometown of Old Silent Hill. In the dog ending, you come to the revelation that the events of Silent Hill 2 Remake were orchestrated by a Shiba Inu named Mira. In this ending, there are a couple of neat references to the original Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill Pakislot. In the original dog ending, James would speak in Japanese by his original voice actor, Guy Sihi.
Omae no shiwaza datta no ka?
In the remake's dog ending, James speaks in Polish by his voice actor, Luke Roberts.
Bakashi. Nie! To nie może być prawda.
The monitor displays a picture of Mira that is taken from one of the promotional images from Silent Hill Pakislot. In the UFO ending, James summons a UFO that is revealed to have the original James Sunderland from the original Silent Hill 2 accompanied by an alien, known as the Greys. The original UFO ending of the original Silent Hill 2 initially had Harry Mason, the protagonist of Silent Hill 1, accompanying the Greys. As you make your way to Southvale, you'll find yourself exploring much of this section of the town to get parts that are required for the jukebox puzzle. While exploring, you'll most likely find yourself walking down Neely Street. Neely Street has had quite a bit of an extensive history that is not as well known. This development extends previously to the original Silent Hill 2. During the production of Silent Hill 2, Team Silent took time to fly to California to the Konami branch located in Redwood City. Neighboring Redwood City is a city called San Bruno, California. Team Silent would use this opportunity as a means to capture photography for reference when idealizing and visioning the town of Southvale. This would see the creation of the back alley neighborhoods to then one of the streets named Neely Street. When comparing the reference of the locations themselves to the buildings seen in game, it's easy to see the resemblance side by side. However, later on in development, many of the buildings in Neely Street that were inspired by real-life buildings in San Bruno would be cut and changed to avoid legality issues with image appropriation. Interestingly, much of the original buildings seen in the original Silent Hill 2 would be used as a reference and even translated to the remake, with familiar looking buildings seen from the original. Speaking of Neely Street, If we were to walk down the street itself, you'd stumble upon a police cruiser parked next to the sidewalk. If you were to approach the vehicle, then stand in front of the hood, and look closely, you can find 3 symbols located in the left, right, and bottom regions of the Silent Hill New England Police Department symbol. These 3 runes are associated with the Halo of the Sun symbol, a symbol that is closely associated with the cult's The Order, a cult that has been a part of Silent Hill since its early history. The Halo of the Sun, when defining its religious beliefs and values by the cults, its foundation is believing in the resurrection, God, and the inner world. Or simply put, by one of the leaders of the cult, Claudia Wolf, the rebirth of God and the birth of a new paradise. In context, much of the mystical and psychological nature that is derived from the town of Silent Hill itself is based profoundly on the cult's practices that are sourced from the symbol itself. The 3 runes seen here are the following: the TPRUS, or the TPRUS, the AMB, or the AMB, and finally the TPRU, or the TPRU. What these 3 runes have with one another is correlated and directly tied to the Hungarian runes found in Old Hungarian script, an alphabetic writing system used to write and speak the Hungarian language in the 17th century. It's theorized that the 3 runes seen here have a relation to God. Eventually, the Halo of the Sun makes another brief appearance, seen partially in room 106 behind torn wallpaper upon exploring Night West South Vale. Also, while on the topic of the Halo of the Sun and the 3 runes found on the hood of the police cruiser, the Silent Hill New England Police Department, or just the police department in general, is previously seen in Silent Hill 1, specifically located in Central Silent Hill. In Neely's bar, there is a message that is plastered on the window with newspapers that have the message, "There was a hole here, it's gone now." Undoubtedly, this is one of, if not the most ominous and mysterious of messages that the player can find throughout the game. Interestingly, this isn't the only message but one of many other vague messages that appear throughout James's journey. If we were to dissect and interpret this message with what's given to us at face value, it's hard to decipher and understand what this message can mean. But given the context of the town of Silent Hill's psychological and mystical nature, that manifests much of the user's subconscious thoughts that become manifested in physical form, the messages may be directly tied to James's suffering as a means to punish him. This can be supported by some messages that taunt James by deriving from his subconscious desires and thoughts that are seen in this physical messaging that is meant to be a form of him seeking punishment, but simultaneously, possibly even intentionally, guidance into the step in the right direction in his journey to find Mary. There are also the literal holes James stumbles upon in-game when it comes to either putting his hand into a deep hole to grab an essential item needed for a puzzle, or his encounter of the holes to jump down from Silent Hill Historical Society into Toluca Prison, and eventually into the Labyrinth. This shows James' lack of care and self-worth when it comes to committing these very rash and admittedly dangerous actions that see him become reckless and not caring what happens to himself. When Masahiro Ito was asked about his thoughts and interpretation of the "there was a hole here, it's gone now" message, he stated, "The original phrase, 'there was a hole here, it's gone now,' was not by me, but a 3D environment artist, Miura, or the scenario writer, Owaku." This is one of the brilliant phrases from that. I love it. Masahiro Ito. A couple months later, Masahiro Ito gets asked a similar question concerning the message, which sees him state that it was once again either conceived from Takashi Miura or Hiroyuki Owaku, members of Team Silent that worked on the original Silent Hill 2. His interpretation is that James is trying to hide in a hole, but can't. Furthermore, Masahiro Ito finalizes his thoughts stating that the message is up to interpretation. In the store, Green Pharmacy, there is the option to enter and find a receipt on the counter. This receipt contains 4 prescription medications: Relive Mid, Barolomin, Zolprazanax, and finally, Imat Nilamid. These prescriptions are in reality fake and made specifically as fictional medication for the game and based on real-world medication. However, the importance of these medications is that they are treated for anxiety disorder and cancer treatment. This can be symbolic of Mary's unknown illness and the possibility of James having to purchase similar or the same medication for her health. What's interesting and important to note that the original actor for James Sutherland, Guy Seehey, mentioned that he believed that Mary's illness was skin cancer, or more specifically, melanoma. Silent Hill was also known to have many illnesses that resulted in Brookhaven Hospital being created, which was a direct response to these sudden and inexplicable illnesses. This is further supported by the memos found in Brookhaven Hospital, which detail the doctor's documentation and explain much of the treated patient's actions and results of treatment. In Woodside Apartments, specifically room 207, they have balloons that state, "Welcome home." The purpose of these balloons are meant for an unlockable achievement called Let's Not Party. You unlock this achievement by popping all 11 balloons. However, what's interesting about this specific welcome home message is that it's very similar and possibly a reference to a message that also states welcome home in one of the Silent Hill 4 promotional advertisements. It's no mere coincidence that there are also 2 other Silent Hill 4 Easter eggs that have a newspaper article documenting the murders from Walter Sullivan, the antagonist from Silent Hill 4, and a replica of an apartment room in room 102 that closely resembles room 302 in regards to its interior design. In Lakeview Hotel, specifically on the employee floor, you can find a puzzle that results in you having to access the basement key to access the basement floor. Upon completing the puzzle, you get a symbol that is of the Sigil of Paimon. The Sigil of Paimon is a symbol that is of the spirit of the same name, Paimon, a demon that is closely tied to and worships Lucifer. Paimon is known for being unrelenting in his emotionally and psychologically manipulative tactics towards the victims he preys on. The Sigil of Paimon may be connected to Maria, as she is seen to, while different in her personality and her intentions, result in emotionally and sexually manipulative towards James from completing his journey and finding Mary. Such specific instances of these actions by Maria are seen, such as when they first meet on the pier in Rosewater Park, or in the jail cell in the Labyrinth. Themes of occultism aren't new to the Silent Hill series, as it has a profound use of mythology that is previously seen in the Halo of the Sun, Seal of Metatron, or the Floros. One of the most rewarding and accomplished feelings a player can receive upon consecutive playthroughs is an unlockable that mandates the player to undergo such requirements to meet the criteria. The same can be said with the unlockables in Silent Hill 2 Remake. However, one would come to find that there is a significant lack of a couple of unlockable weapons that were seen in the original Silent Hill 2 that didn't make it into the final game. These weapons would be the Hyperspray and the Great Knife. Because these weapons were cut, with the exception of the Great Knife, which resulted in a scripted gameplay sequence, I want to elaborate a bit more on the function and the use of said weapons for those unaware of the original. The Hyperspray was an item unlocked after completing the game with a specific star ranking that rewarded the player with different Hyperspray colors. These would come in 4 variations: purple, white, yellow, and green. Each variation would result in a different outcome with the damage output it inflicts upon an enemy. The green Hyperspray, for example, instantly kills all enemies and ends every boss fight immediately with a single spray. The drawback, however, results in having a limited quantity to use that can backfire by also inflicting damage on James over time. The irony of the Hyperspray being cut and removed from the remake is technically not true, since you can actually find the model of the Hyperspray in the top stairwell of Woodside Apartments. Unfortunately, this weapon is not possible to unlock after completing the game or with a requirement in mind. The Hyperspray found here is merely just a reference or an Easter egg to the original. The Great Knife was a weapon that was unlocked in the original Silent Hill 2 by exploring the labyrinth in a specific room found in Pyramid Head's lair, which you can acquire by simply interacting with it once found. The Great Knife deals considerably the best weapon damage towards enemies and bosses when it comes to melee attacks. The drawback of this weapon, however, is the lack of mobility as you drag it behind you when equipped, and the slow time frame when omitting an attack animation. The Great Knife, while technically accessible and equipped in Silent Hill 2 Remake, is only for a brief scripted gameplay sequence that mandates the player to bypass the mannequins blocking your progress. After passing the hallway, you are then forced to drop the Great Knife and cannot equip it again as a weapon. Bullet Adjust was a feature you unlocked after the first playthrough of the main scenario, which rewarded the player a multiplier of customability towards bullet quantity for firearms such as the handgun, the shotgun, and the hunting rifle. The bullet adjustment provided the option of multiplying the bullet capacity with ×1, ×2, or ×3. Extra riddle difficulty is the hardest difficulty when regarding the puzzles seen throughout the gameplay. This completely overhauls some of the puzzles with randomized outcomes and vague clues when problem solving for a solution. This is unlocked upon completing puzzle difficulty on easy, normal, and hard. Upon completing the puzzle difficulty on hard, this will then unlock the extra riddle difficulty the next time you start a playthrough. Born from a Wish was a sub-scenario that was accessible from the main menu that you can choose to play after finishing the main scenario, Letter from Silent Heaven. This was included in the expanded edition of Silent Hill 2 and the Restless Dreams for Xbox, Greatest Hits for PS2, or the PC version. In Born from a Wish, you play as Maria, previously seen in the main scenario as a major character in James Sunderland's story. Here, we get a prologue to the events of Letter from Silent Heaven, where we see Maria being birthed in Heaven's Night, from James Sunderland's subconscious desire to wish for an idealized Mary that is seen in Maria. It's here where we see Maria struggle to find a purpose and has existential thoughts of her existence, though continues to seek for a reason to keep on living by traveling to Baldwin Mansion to hopefully find answers there. As far as we are aware, we have not had confirmation in regards to Born from a Wish having its own scenario sometime in the future as DLC, or if it's content that's even considered to be realized and eventually released. Upon accessing the files in the PC version of Silent Hill 2 Remake, there are a couple of very interesting findings when regarding unused content. Early on in development, it appears that there was initially a different version of the save screen that you use via the red squares seen throughout the gameplay. Here, we can see the early version of the save screen showed James's face obscured by the red color filter that looks very similar to the save screen in the original Silent Hill 2. In the final version, however, this would be completely different as it chose to have a real-time save screen that showed an in-game model of James Sunderland. There are a couple of files that have the name Young James Work in Progress that feature facial features of seemingly early stages of a potential younger James Sunderland that would have possibly been de-aged in comparison to the final model we see of James. We do know that at some point in development, James had an overhaul to his character model when it came to the difference in the teaser trailer of Silent Hill 2 Remake back in 2022, in comparison to the final version we received with the released Silent Hill 2 Remake. There's an unused memo that shows what looks like to be a journal entry to the left-hand side of the page, while to the right-hand side, there is a description telling James the location of a car in a back alley with a key. This presumably refers to the car seen in the back alley in Southvale, where you acquire the apartment key for Woodset Apartments. This unused memo titled ID Badge _01 features a rusted and decayed advertisement of Silent Hill Post Office. The name, Jacob S., appears with a depiction of a mysterious figure faded out by the worn, decayed quality of the paper. We don't have a clue who Jacob S. could be, but this is likely a reference to Jacob Singer, the main protagonist of the psychological horror movie Jacob's Ladder. Jacob's Ladder was one of the main influences on the development of Silent Hill 2. As of recently, a YouTube user called The Kempy made a video on Silent Hill 2 Remake that does a comparison with an early beta version of Silent Hill 2 Remake titled version 1.0 and the final version titled version 1.3. Version 1.0 shows very significant and minor changes to the cutscenes, audio, and gameplay. A couple of examples when it comes to notable cut content that has been found in version 1.0 is the staircase scene with Angela and James, which shows the presentation of the fire having a brighter and vibrant color. The Abstract Daddy boss fight originally had the flesh walls James is seen traversing have a breathing animation to simulate a physical and sentient quality to Angela's otherworld. Finally, the dog ending had a drastically altered cutscene that played out much differently compared to the final version of the dog ending we see in version 1.3. One of the most mysterious and intriguing objects that recur throughout Silent Hill 2 is undoubtedly the red squares. These red squares, at face value, are merely seen as a tool to save the player's progress at any given time through the locations you explore. You simply walk up to them and save your progress. And while this may seem evident with its overall function and presentation, these red squares offer far more substance to the player than you may initially suspect. To properly evaluate and give a concrete explanation behind this symbolic device, we need to go back to the original Silent Hill 2 to gain a familiar understanding. Much like Silent Hill 2 Remake, the original Silent Hill 2 also utilized the red squares as a save point mechanic for the player's progress. Inside the well is a red square that is very ominous and mysterious. A clue we can gain about the red square is when James makes a comment on it. James states, "Looking at this makes me feel like someone's groping around inside my skull." With this very vague description, this implies the red square can have a mental and physical effect on the user in question, that being James Sunderland. What's important about this little detail is that these effects work similarly to the function of the town that is Silent Hill when it comes to the town's spiritual power, manifesting such psychological and mental features that work differently in how each person sees them in their perspective. For example, many of the monsters that James sees throughout his experience in Silent Hill have various designs that have specific features to them, such as the bubblehead nurses and mannequins having notable sexual qualities that are emphasized to express James's suppressed sexual desires, and starvation from his wife Mary while she was sick. The flesh lips and the lying figure have appearances that express confinement and pain, where they vocalize their agony, a reflection of James's pain, having to sit by and try to support a dying Mary while she was sick, whilst feeling the harsh beratement from her with such psychological and mental torture he suffered from. Another notable example of this symbolic representation of James's mental psyche is the mouths that appear on the monsters. The mouths are a reflection of violent and brutal language coming from Mary, that is either her mouthing off James with harsh and cruel words, or her vocalizing her pain and suffering from her illness. The point of the symbolism seen coexisting with the monsters that are manifested from James's mind is to emphasize not only the town's spiritual and psychological power it possesses, that derives from the person who is sent to Silent Hill itself, but to express how these delusions are meant to be subtle and visual imagery to the memories that James suppresses, and slowly builds up to remembering that he killed his wife Mary in the climax of the story. An effort to punish James for his sins and the crimes he has committed against Mary, but also a brutal and harsh reflection of accepting the consequences in his journey, to finally come to self-acceptance for what he has done and forgive himself. One of these subtle yet unique ways James uncovers these memories is when he interacts with the red squares. It's through these visual implications and imagery of the presentation itself when it comes to the save screen that shows but doesn't tell the player. It can be interpreted that James looking at the red square is him reflecting upon his memories of the experiences he's had with Mary in his time before the events of Silent Hill 2, slowly uncovering and unraveling as the story progresses. To make this even more personal and meta, James's comment at the beginning of the game with the first red square can be seen as the player literally and figuratively reaching into his mind to recover his memories.
It's like someone's groping around my skull.
To go off topic for a brief moment, we can support this with Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3, as they similarly have save functions that mechanic the same in terms of gameplay, but also as a symbolic device. For Silent Hill 1, it uses a notepad as its save point. To the side of the notepad is a pen to literally write down your progress. To contextualize this in a metaphorical sense, Harry Mason, the main protagonist of Silent Hill 1, has an occupation as a freelance writer, writing down his thoughts and memories as he experiences the events of Silent Hill 1. In Silent Hill 3, we see the first save point shortly after the intro cutscene with Heather and Douglas interacting. As Heather finds herself retreating to the women's restroom, the first thing we see is a Halo of the Sun symbol, a symbol that is affiliated with the cult, the Order, meant to be a representation of the rebirth of God, one of the main goals and motivations behind the cult's intentions. What's interesting about this save room, however, is Heather's comment when she looks at herself in the mirror when interacting with the Halo of the Sun symbol. She states the following: "The mark on this mirror, it looks familiar somehow. What do I know it from? Where did I once see it? And why does my head hurt so much when I try to remember it?" Upon finishing her comment, we then get transported to the main save theme, along with a background of Heather looking at herself, much like James when he interacts with the red squares seen previously. What's even more interesting is what Heather has to say when looking at herself in the following mirror. She says, "I don't like mirrors. It's almost like there's an unknown world right on the other side, and the person staring at me isn't really me, just an imitator. I know how stupid that sounds, but that's how I feel. But if I keep thinking about it, it just makes me sick." The words that Heather expresses here are correlated to her memories that she has forgotten over time because of the events from Silent Hill 1. Here, we see Harry Mason receive the reincarnation of Cheryl Mason and Alessa Gillespie, two halves that now represent one person. Cheryl represents a life filled of happiness and love, while the other half, Alessa Gillespie, would be the juxtaposition, the embodiment of negative emotions and the pain she suffered in her past life, now manifested as the memory of Alessa. The point of this elaboration, which is tied to Silent Hill 3, is to show how memories are a reliant and heavy theme seen throughout the games, which is not only used as a plot device to further the story, but also used as symbolism. Furthering the repurpose of the red squares motif is also seen physically on the nurses, not to be confused with the bubblehead nurses from Silent Hill 2. While different in regards to their overall meaning, they serve the same function when it comes to the idea of memories in the human subconscious. The nurses are a representation of Alessa's time spent in Alchemilla Hospital for years after being burnt alive and being nursed back to health by one of the nurses named Lisa Garland. The character model of the nurse seen in Silent Hill 3 is notable for having its eyes shut and the mouth with a red square over it, meant to serve as Alessa's inner madness that she felt in those years of isolation and confinement. Masahiro Ito confirms the use of the red squares being repurposed for Silent Hill 3, being specifically tied to Alessa's negative and traumatic memories that are seen manifested in the nurses, meant to convey suffering and pain, similar to how the bubblehead nurse in Silent Hill 2 also had a similar design and appearance to convey Mary's verbally abusive nature towards James during her time in illness. So now that we have an idea as to what the red squares could possibly mean, what exactly is their overall purpose seen in Silent Hill 2? Well, I think to get a definitive answer, or at least partially an answer, we can look at what Masahiro Ito has to say. According to Masahiro Ito, when asked what the 9 red squares can mean, he says the following: "That has a few reasons. I don't want to say too much, and I'll leave it to your imagination basically. But, for example, what number of hallucinations did James see on his journey? Towards the end of the game, before the Pyramid Head duo boss fight and the final boss of Mary, you will encounter 9 red squares. These 9 red squares are a representation of James's delusions of the 9 monsters he encounters in his journey up to this point. These are the lying figure, mannequin, bubblehead nurse, flesh lips, Mandarin, Abstract Daddy, Pyramid Head, Mary, and finally, Maria. What's a small yet subtle detail about this final save point is that when James looks into the red square, this time he is intentionally looking away as opposed to the previous times where he looked directly into it, resulting in a guilt-ridden and afraid James Sunderland from learning the truth with the revelation of him killing his wife, Mary. This leads me to interpretate the red squares as a device that is purposed to allow the user to see themselves internally into their subconscious to reflect on their memories. A reflection of reconstructing the truth by diving into their psyche to reveal their desires, their fears, and their weaknesses to remember what they seek and face who they are.